The laboratory hummed with activity as Dr. Sarana Vec watched the regeneration pod complete its final cycle. After 6 months of meticulous work, countless failed attempts and resources that had strained her research facility to its limits, they had finally succeeded. Inside the transparent chamber, suspended in biogel, floated a human male, the first to exist in over 200 years. Sarana pressed her orange-skinned hand against the pod's surface, her blonde hair falling forward as she leaned closer. The human looked peaceful, his features relaxed in artificial sleep. According to the genetic template they'd recovered from the archives, he was approximately 28 years old, 6 feet tall, with dark hair and what humans had called Mediterranean features. But the data couldn't tell her what he'd be like when he woke up. If he woke up. "Vitals are stable," announced Dr. Kelris, Sarana's assistant. "Neural pathways have integrated successfully. Brain activity patterns match the baseline we extrapolated from historical records. Dr. Vec, I think he's ready." Sarana took a breath, her twin hearts racing. This wasn't just another experiment. This was humanity's last hope, and possibly its last role in a galaxy that had moved on without them. The human species had been extinct for 2 centuries, victims of a plague that had swept through Earth's colonies with devastating speed. By the time the galactic community realized what was happening, it was too late. Humans died by the billions, their immune systems helpless against a pathogen engineered by an enemy they'd never even met. Within 10 years, humanity was gone, nothing left but empty cities, abandoned space stations, and archived DNA samples preserved in research facilities across the galaxy. Sarana had been studying those archives for years, fascinated by the species that had, in just a few centuries of space travel, made such an enormous impact on galactic culture. Humans had been bold, creative, emotionally volatile, and utterly unique. Their art, their music, their literature, all of it survived, studied and admired by a dozen species. But the humans themselves were lost. Until now. The Interspecies Council had commissioned this project with a specific purpose in mind. A new threat had emerged in the outer territories, a hostile species called the Zathran, immune to conventional weapons and driven by an insatiable hunger for conquest. Every defense the Galactic Alliance had attempted had failed. The Zathran were winning. But historical records showed that humans had possessed something unique, an ability to think tactically in ways other species couldn't, to make intuitive leaps that defied logic but somehow worked. They'd won impossible battles through sheer audacity and unconventional thinking. The Council hoped that recreating a human might give them the strategic edge they desperately needed. They wanted a weapon. Sarana wanted to give life back to a dead species. "Begin wake-up protocol," she ordered. The pod drained slowly, lowering the human onto the padded platform. Sarana watched his chest rise and fall with increasing strength as his body took over its own respiratory function. His eyelids fluttered. His fingers twitched. Then his eyes opened, brown, confused, alive. For a moment, nobody moved. The human's gaze swept across the laboratory, taking in the alien faces surrounding him, the technology he couldn't possibly understand, the reality that he wasn't on Earth or anywhere he'd recognize. Where? His voice was rough, unused. Where am I? Sarana stepped forward, trying to project calm despite her racing hearts. You're safe. My name is Dr. Sarana Vec. You're in a research facility orbiting what used to be called Kepler 442b. Do you understand what I'm saying? The human sat up slowly, his movements unsteady. Yes, I understand, but I don't. I don't remember. Who am I? This was expected. The cloning process couldn't recreate memories, only the physical and genetic template. Your name is Adam. It's the name we gave you, taken from human mythology, the first man. Adam, he repeated, testing the word. Why can't I remember anything? What happened to me? Sarana exchanged glances with her team. They debated how much to tell him immediately, but she'd always believed in honesty. Adam, this will be difficult to hear. You're a clone created from archived human DNA. The original person whose genetic code you carry died over 200 years ago. All humans did. You're the first of your species to exist in 2 centuries. The color drained from Adam's face. That's impossible. Humans can't be extinct. Earth, the colonies, gone, Sarana said gently. I'm sorry, Earth is there, but it's empty. The plague took everyone. Adam's hands began to shake. Everyone. My family, my friends. You don't have specific memories of them because we couldn't recreate those. But yes, everyone from your genetic donor's time is gone. You're alone, Adam. We brought you back for a purpose. What purpose? His voice was hollow. To save the galaxy, Kelris interjected. To be humanity's last role in? Kelris, not now, Sarana interrupted sharply. She turned back to Adam, seeing the trauma and confusion in his brown eyes. Right now, your purpose is to survive, to adjust, to learn about the galaxy as it exists today. The rest can wait. But the Council didn't want to wait. Within a week, Admiral Tikron arrived at the facility, an imposing military officer from a species that resembled armored reptiles. He stood over Adam, who was still weak from the regeneration process, and spoke with brutal directness. Human, we invested enormous resources in your creation. The Zathran are destroying our fleets, conquering our worlds. We need you to analyze their tactics and develop counter-strategies. Historical records indicate your species excelled at unconventional warfare. Adam, sitting in the medical bay with monitoring equipment still attached to his chest, looked up at the Admiral with an expression Sarana was learning to read, anger mixed with exhaustion. I'm not a weapon. I'm a person who didn't ask to be created. You're humanity's legacy, Tikron insisted. You have a duty. To whom? Adam stood, his legs still unsteady, but his voice strong. To a species that's been dead for 200 years. To a galaxy that let my people die. I don't owe you anything. Tikron's reptilian eyes narrowed dangerously. Then you're worthless. We'll terminate this failed experiment and try again with a new clone. Perhaps one more? Cooperative. You will do no such thing, Sarana said, stepping between them. Adam is a sentient being with full legal rights under galactic law. He's not your weapon to command or discard. The standoff lasted several tense moments before Tikron backed down, but as he left, he delivered a parting warning. The Zathran will reach the inner systems within 6 months. When they do, everyone will die, including your precious human. Perhaps when he sees the stakes, he'll reconsider his selfishness. After Tikron left, Adam sat down heavily, his head in his hands. They created me to be a tool. That's all I am to them. That's all they want you to be, Sarana corrected. She sat beside him, careful to maintain appropriate distance. But I didn't recreate you just to serve their purpose. I did it because humans deserve to exist again, because your species contributed something beautiful to the galaxy, and it was wrong that you were erased. Whatever you choose to do with your life, Adam, that's your choice, not theirs, not mine. Over the next weeks, Sarana became Adam's guide to the galaxy he'd been reborn into. She showed him recordings of Earth as it had been, then as it was now, cities reclaimed by nature, monuments to a species that no longer existed. She taught him about the dozens of alien species that now dominated galactic politics, their cultures and histories. But mostly, she just talked to him. About music, Adam discovered he loved the complex symphonies of the Tellurian composers. About food, he found most alien cuisine bizarre but developed a fondness for Nexari spice cakes. About the simple things that made life worth living, even for the last human in existence. Why did you really do this? Adam asked one evening as they sat in the observation deck, watching stars wheel past. Bring me back, I mean. The council wanted a weapon, but you keep treating me like a person. Sarana was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. My species, the Kaltari, nearly went extinct once. A civil war 3,000 years ago. We were saved by an intervention from the Terran Alliance, your people's alliance. Humans sacrificed their own resources, their own lives, to help strangers they barely knew. I grew up hearing stories about human compassion, about how they valued every sentient life. She turned to look at Adam, her amber eyes reflecting starlight. When the plague hit humanity, the galactic community didn't do enough. We watched your species die, and we mourned, but we didn't save you. That guilt has haunted many of us. Bringing you back, it was partly to repay a debt, but also because I wanted to know if the stories were true, if humans really were as remarkable as the legends suggested. And, Adam asked, am I remarkable or just a disappointing copy of something better? You're real, Sarana said simply. That makes you remarkable. Adam reached out and took her hand, a human gesture of connection that Sarana had read about but never experienced. His skin was warmer than hers, his grip gentle but firm. Thank you, Sarana, for seeing me as more than a weapon or an experiment. But the Zathran didn't care about personal connections or individual worth. They continued their advance, destroying 3 more systems in the following month. The casualty reports were staggering. Millions dead, billions displaced. The Galactic Alliance was losing badly. Adam watched the reports with growing distress. I can't just ignore this, he told Sarana. I may not have asked to be created, but I'm here now. People are dying. You don't owe them your life, Sarana insisted. The council wants to use you, put you in danger. I know, but maybe that's not the only way. Adam pulled up the tactical displays he'd been studying obsessively for weeks. Look at this. Every engagement with the Zathran follows the same pattern. They're incredibly adaptive, yes, but they're also predictable in their unpredictability. They expect conventional tactics, so they've evolved to counter them. But what if we didn't fight them conventionally? What are you suggesting? Adam's eyes lit up with an intensity Serana hadn't seen before. Humans were good at asymmetric warfare, at finding weaknesses that shouldn't exist, at turning disadvantages into advantages. The Zathran are strong, but strength can be exploited. Let me talk to the Council. Not as their weapon, as a consultant. I'll help, but on my terms. The plan Adam proposed was insane. Instead of engaging the Zathran in direct combat, he suggested using their own aggression against them. The Zathran fed on certain energy frequencies. That's what made them so dangerous to conventional ships. But what if those frequencies could be weaponized? We make them hungry, Adam explained to the assembled council. We deploy drones that emit the exact frequencies they crave in concentrations that are irresistible. They'll pursue the drones into prepared kill zones, areas of space we've seeded with gravitational anomalies, radiation traps, anything that doesn't use the conventional energy they're immune to. They'll adapt, Tikron argued. Eventually, yes, but we keep changing the bait, keep them reactive instead of proactive. Every time they adapt, we shift tactics. Humans used to call it death by 1,000 cuts. We don't need to destroy them all at once. We just need to slow their advance until we can study them enough to develop better defenses. The council debated for hours. Finally, they agreed to try Adam's approach, but only if he accompanied the fleet to coordinate the strategy in real time. Absolutely not, Serana said when she heard. Adam, you've never been in combat. You don't know what you're agreeing to. I know people are dying, Adam replied, and I might be able to help stop it. Isn't that worth the risk? Not if it means losing you. Adam, you're the last human. If you die, then I die trying to save others instead of living safely while the galaxy burns. Serana, humans weren't perfect. Our history is full of mistakes and cruelty. But we also believed in standing up for what's right, even when it's dangerous. If that's my species' last role to remind the galaxy what it means to fight for others, then I'll play that role gladly. The Battle of the Outer Rim lasted 6 days. Adam coordinated from the command ship, his human intuition and pattern recognition abilities proving as valuable as the legends suggested. He saw connections other species missed, predicted Zathran movements before they happened, adapted strategies on the fly in ways that defied logical analysis, but worked perfectly. The Zathran took the bait, pursuing the drone signals into trap after trap. They began to retreat, their advance finally halted for the first time in a year. But on day 6, a Zathran strike force broke through the defense perimeter and attacked the command ship. The crew evacuated, but Adam was trapped in the tactical center when the hull breach occurred. Serana, monitoring from the facility, watched the feeds in horror as alarms blared and Adam's life signs fluctuated. "Get him out of there," she screamed at the rescue coordinators. "We're trying, but the structural damage. I don't care about the structure. Save him." The rescue took 47 minutes, the longest of Serana's life. When they finally extracted Adam from the wreckage, he was barely alive. Critical injuries, massive trauma, failing systems. They rushed him to the medical bay, and Serana stood over his broken body, her hands shaking as she worked to save him. "Don't you dare die," she whispered as she repaired damaged organs with nanite infusions. Don't you dare leave me alone with the weight of bringing you back just to lose you. Adam survived, but barely. His recovery took months, and Sarana never left his side. She read to him when he was unconscious, talked to him during his physical therapy, celebrated every small victory in his healing process. "Why do you care so much?" Adam asked during one late-night session, his voice still weak. Sarana looked at him, this human she'd brought back from extinction, this person who'd become more important to her than she'd ever imagined. "Because you're my friend. Because I created you, and that makes me responsible for you. And because I think I'm falling in love with you, which is illogical and complicated and probably a terrible idea, but there it is." Adam managed a weak smile. "My species had a saying, 'In for a penny, in for a pound.' If we're doing complicated and illogical, let's do it properly." He reached for her hand, and she took it, interspecies contact that violated a dozen protocols and felt absolutely right. The Zathran advance was permanently halted. Adam's tactics, refined and implemented by military strategists across the Alliance, had bought the galaxy time to develop better defenses. The Council offered Adam a permanent position as strategic advisor, with resources and authority beyond what most beings could dream of. He declined. "I've played humanity's last role as a warrior," Adam told them. "Now I want to play a different role. Teacher, maybe, artist, friend, partner." He glanced at Sarana, who stood beside him. "I want to show the galaxy that humans weren't just warriors or strategists. We were people who loved, who created, who found joy in simple things." That's a legacy worth preserving. 3 years later, Adam and Sarana stood in a new facility they'd built together, not a military installation or research lab, but a museum and cultural center dedicated to human history. The galleries displayed art, music, literature, and everyday artifacts that showed the full complexity of human civilization. But the most popular exhibit was the live one, Adam himself, telling stories about humanity to young beings from a dozen species. He spoke about human compassion and stubbornness, about their capacity for both great kindness and terrible mistakes, about what it meant to be imperfect and still worth remembering. "Are you happy?" Sarana asked as they walked through the quiet galleries after closing. Adam pulled her close, a gesture he'd taught her to appreciate. "I'm the last human in existence. I'll never meet another person of my species. I was created to be a weapon and became something else entirely. And yes, I'm happy. Because I get to spend my life with you, sharing my species' story, maybe inspiring others to be better. That's enough." "What if?" Sarana hesitated. "What if you weren't the last? What if we created others, a whole community of humans?" Adam considered this. "Maybe someday, but not yet. Right now, I want to make sure that when humanity returns, if it returns, the galaxy knows us as we really were. Not just the warriors or strategists they wanted us to be, but the full, complicated, wonderful mess of what we were." He looked around the museum, at the preserved evidence of a species that had been extinct for 2 centuries but refused to be forgotten. "We were humanity. We made mistakes. We did beautiful things. We loved fiercely and fought bravely and created art that moved the soul. And our last role isn't just to save the galaxy, it's to remind everyone what's worth saving." Sarana leaned against him, her orange skin warm against his darker tone. Two people from different species finding connection across an impossible divide. Then that's what we'll do. Together. Outside, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the struggles of the beings below. But inside the museum, humanity lived again, not as a weapon or a tool, but as a story worth telling, a legacy worth preserving, and a reminder that even extinct species could still change the galaxy, one person at a time. Adam was humanity's last hope. But more importantly, he was simply Adam, loved, valued, and proof that being the last of something didn't mean being alone.